sometimes it's sometimes it's just difficult to get something off the ground, whether in life or whether just a new podcast episode just starting out with what I'm going to say. Let me clarify what I was talking about in the past video quickly. I was talking about fantasy. The point that I was trying to make is that you need to have game in order to go out and get girls. Like, you're not going to get girls if you have no intention. Like, they're not just going to come to you. Like, maybe it's not so much about being yourself as it is about pretending. And that's how you get girls. But it's a mixture of both. I'm just saying like fantasy, maybe from a sexual standpoint, this involves making fantasy into reality more so, like, and your ability to put on different personas would maybe get you more girls, possibly. Like, but because girls are different from each other, girls are different. But but I'm not really the guy to ask. So, but I'm making it so that I'm the guy to ask, whatever. Every guy has to make it so that they're the guy to ask. That's the point. You have to go out and pretend that you are the guy to ask about how do you meet girls. It's just but that's the point. I'm saying that there's some amount. If you hadn't considered that the pretending that's involved with it, I only bring that up because I spend too much of my life thinking that you can just go out and be the dumb person that you are, and that's enough. Like, there's intentionality involved, and if there's none for you, maybe you're thinking that girls come to you through destiny too much. I'm just trying to add a perspective on the situation, and who needed it? Who needed my perspective on the situation? Nobody did, but you got it anyway if you tuned in. Today I'm going to talk about something else. It's just that today I'm going to talk about something else. Here it is. So my podcast is about currency, and I don't want to forget. Don't want to forget what the topic is. My podcast is about currency. It's about cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency. These deal with object-oriented systems. Let me tell you a bit more about the premise of this podcast that I'm making. Like, I'm going to want to develop my own cryptocurrency, and that will be coming in the future, and it will be in support of this podcast that I'm doing. And because I'm talking about currency, the thing about cryptocurrency is that you want to make one that, well, you making a cryptocurrency has a lot to do with your imagination. Like, it's kind of up to what you imagine, the same way that if you write a program, you create a function, a digitized one, that you write computer code for a program, you get to kind of create whatever program you want and set the rules how you want, and it's up to your imagination, because program writing and coding allows for you to realize what you can imagine, but in a digital space, because it allows for you to be the creator, the writer of a program, in a digital space, but like allows for you to be the creator rather than that you're subject to a creation. And it's like, so I want to create a cryptocurrency that is related to, but like the cryptocurrency, the success of it is dependent on how well you're able to create something that has a vision that people are willing to get on board with, that a community can build around it or whatever. But it's like you get the ability to write a program in a sort of imagined space, in a digital computerized space, and this is a placeholder. The function that you write is representative, or it's like a simulation of stores or spots where transactions and money play out in reality, because a computer software writing allows for you to create a target, but on a computer, like, but as a node. So if you watch my Ethereum episode, I explained more about the difference between address nodes, like address nodes and then nodes that are function for a program, and that these exist on the Ethereum network. And like one of the main categorizations you want to understand across nodes that are on the Ethereum network is that there's a category, like some of the nodes, so there's a bunch of nodes and then there's connection between the nodes. Like the nodes are connected electronically in this giant network, but the nodes are objects. And what they refer in cryptocurrency language, they'll refer to this network as an object-oriented system. So Ethereum is a giant object-oriented system where all of the nodes are the objects, because nodes are objects, and then there's like something like wire that connects them. Like you could imagine it to be wire. It isn't actual wire, because like somebody's cell phone as connected to somebody else's cell phone, where both of those cell phones have a wallet app where they're storing something like Ethereum or Bitcoin. These are not connected with wire, but they're like whatever way that computers are connected in the internet. You know, it's just a giant system. Ethereum's a giant system, and it's like a giant internet object-oriented system. But there are address nodes, which are just somebody's wallet, and then there are nodes that are a function, and they're like a program or an application that's been written on the Ethereum network, on the server that is Ethereum. But basically, contracts, the nodes that are a function or a program that's been written, these are smart contracts, and these are like retailers or car washes or fast food restaurants, the way that those exist in the physical reality. These are like commercial spots. These are commercial addresses, as opposed to residential addresses, which are just wallets where you or another person would store your Bitcoin or whatever. These are residential, and functions, smart contracts, are commercial, or like new cryptocurrencies written on the Ethereum network. These are commercial because these are like businesses, but you get the ability to imagine your own business, or like imagine a new target, retail, or whatever you want, because you get to choose the rules when you write a program as one of these nodes on, say, Ethereum. But there's other blockchains besides Ethereum where you can write a new function or write a new cryptocurrency. Like one of them is Cardano, one of them is Binance. But Binance is, as far as I know, I think as it stands right now, Binance is written in it's written on Ethereum. So Binance, I think, is still a subset of Ethereum because it's primarily, but I don't know enough about that. But you can write a new function on a number of different blockchains as long as it's a blockchain. If you write a new function, this is like a new token. Like if you just create a new token, you're not creating a blockchain. A blockchain is like a much more involved, a bunch of code. So it's like Ethereum is this giant blockchain, but yet is still dependent on code that somebody wrote. Like it's still dependent on a function. So it's still like a company that somebody wrote into existence through computer code. It's just very much more involved, and the code that they wrote allowed for you to create more codes within it. So it's just like a more larger in scope, and allows for functions to be written on it because it was written to be a programming language. So it's a very deep and involved thing that somebody would write code that is written to have code written on it. But so pretty much cryptocurrency allows for all the spots where money plays out, including banks, including governments, including whatever, companies. These can be digitized to an internet, but it's just that things are going more virtual and are being more condensed into like just the same way that all of the functions that you can do, like more and more functions are just, a phone can do that. Or it's like if you just lived in a simulated reality, you would be able to participate in all the functions that you do in physical reality right now, but they would be condensed into just this simulated thing that you're taking part of, but like all in one location, the way that a phone condenses all the functions that a phone can do into one space. Like an internet makes it so that there's just a virtual version of all of all of the places where you can play out transactions in reality. And it's kind of like the premise for Ethereum is like, oh, um, like people exchanging money. As it turns out, we can just do this in a digital space. You see that this is true because of the engagement that people have with the internet and just with their phone. Like people are willing to do all the same things, but just virtually, as it turns out, just on computers. And so Ethereum takes us to an even further level where it's just like, oh, let's see if anytime that you're paying money for something, that we can just do this in a more digital space rather than like physically in reality, because as it turns out, people are willing to just do this digitally as opposed to actually. And so it's like you have Target, and if you go into Target, so Target is a retail store, and the function is written a certain way for Target, for money to play out, so that when you bring your money to Target, you can exchange it in all of these ways, all of the things that you can buy within Target. So it's kind of like the program for Target is written such that you can exchange money for all of these things, or like your money can be sent through all of these pathways, like the different things that you can exchange it for. This is what Target allows for, with the rules that are set up for Target, set up for things to play out within Target facilities. But just the entire game, Target is a giant game, and it's different from all the other games, but they try to position themselves as a more valuable game, you understand. But at the point that the internet comes into the picture, you don't need something like facilities for Target. Things are becoming more digital, but it's like Target is going to view it, because they're concerned with money and they're good at targeting audiences. This is why they're popular. Besides that, coincidentally, their name is Target, but they're good at targeting audiences, I would say. And they're going to target a certain amount of people from a higher income bracket and a lower income bracket, a medium income bracket that they want in their stores, that there's like at least this many amount of like rich people or whatever, or maybe they're just primarily going for middle income. You know, they have their target audiences, but they want to bring in a diversified portfolio worth of different incomes to some extent. But basically, when customers go through the store in Target, Target's going to see them as the amount of money that they have in their pockets, because Target is dependent on money. At the point that Target goes out of business, they're not still doing things for people. They're not offering anything anymore. They're dependent on money, so they're seeing the people walking through the door just as money. But like Target this way, and then all retailers, all companies that are looking for your money that you pass in and out of, you are like you're like electricity, the way that electricity runs through what's connecting the nodes on a Ethereum network in an object-oriented system. Like people are like electricity, like current, that they are going in and out of all of these stores, and different stores are like different nodes on like a virtual network. If you're making the analogy to Ethereum, like different stores are like different nodes on a network on like Ethereum or in an object-oriented system, and people pass through them like current. But like, especially if you're looking at it from the perspective that these stores want your money, people are just the money in their pockets, and they're passing through and exchanging money for Target and receiving money back. But it's like, if you write a new cryptocurrency, you're saying that this function that you make communicates itself in its own currency. So somebody wrote what's a token on Ethereum, like maybe Stellar. What's a token? I can't think of an example of just something that's a token on Ethereum offhand. I should have prepared it before. So this is so bad. Oh no. Nobody even knows what I'm talking about anyway. Like the token, one of the tokens that's written on Ethereum, I think, is Stellar. XLM. Let me think. But so there's certain tokens that are written. So it's like Stellar is written on Ethereum, but even though it's on Ethereum, it's still its own currency. And so there's a number of these tokens that are a cryptocurrency on Ethereum, as I explained in the Ethereum video. But they also, as a cryptocurrency, they're their own currency. The way that the same thing plays out in the real world, where all like Target and a dentist office and a bank like Chase Bank and but any business, all of the businesses that you see around you, like a psychiatry services or haircut services, they are all money spots, but they are money spots on the US dollar system as opposed to the Ethereum system. So we already have cryptocurrency, a giant digitized object-oriented system network. In the physical reality, it's just that it's on the US dollar as opposed to Ethereum. So Ethereum being a blockchain as opposed to just a token on a blockchain is like a country. So blockchains are like national countries that offer their own currency that you can write all these other currencies on. The US dollar works this way for the physical, for America, physically, where every money spot is a node on the network that communicates itself in the currency that is the US dollar. On Ethereum, they communicate in Ethereum, but they're their own currency. Target is its own currency. They pay all their employees in Target money, Target currency. And they receive that as a result of people engaging with their function. So the more engagement that you have with your function, the more viable and relevant your currency is. And so you need to, so Target, before it started, needed to present a vision, put forward a vision that people could get on board with. And like before there were any retailers, it probably would have been just as confusing to imagine that there's like that there would be this world where America's this giant shopping mall full of retailers and fast food restaurants before that existed, that like people would come up with a different vision for what they're putting out in the world. But basically, and so then they did that. I'm saying that like just as confusing as it would be to try to imagine what this cryptocurrency world is that cryptocurrency enthusiasts speak about, it would have been difficult to imagine any giant new system that hadn't fully developed yet, kind of like the retail system as it is today in comparison to before when we didn't know about that. But like all of the retailers are on the US dollar, but then they onto the US dollar, because the US dollar is like currency that runs through all these spots, and people, for example, people bring money to different retailers, different functions that exist on the network. And so the smart contracts are commercial, and then addresses are just residential. And so people leave their residences and bring it to functions like Target, and then they exchange it based on the rules of the game that Target is dictating. Or they could go to Walmart and there's slightly different rules because there's slightly different set of things you can buy. But there's just like money, then you see the way that this plays out in the real world. There is something a little bit digital about this already, just by the nature of money, because but anyway, so you go in and out of Target, and you go, so people are like currency, where they're going all in and out of things, and then they transact in terms of what Target does. But like so in some ways you'd understand, this would point to why Ethereum is so valuable. But like what I'm saying is it's object-oriented system, the nodes on the network, people are like electrons. Like, what I'm trying to figure out, what is the electron in this analogy, because what delivers the money in the real world is people. What delivers the money in Ethereum network is like electricity, essentially. And a lot of Ethereum and blockchains, they come down to electricity, because at the heart of it, you understand that all of this electricity is being generated because it's like a country. Bitcoin is like a country, and people say that, they'll say that like Bitcoin uses up more electricity than all of Argentina. But that's because in a world where there are all these really significant blockchains, and people are using them for their intended functions, these would take up as much electricity as countries because they are like countries, but they would replace countries because countries, among other things, serve, like, it's important that they establish this environment in which like the US dollar runs through everything like current, and but like digitally, if it's all current, we already call these things currency. Like, to get at the heart of it, a more comprehensive and efficient way of explaining money to ourselves, communicating it, because we're playing out money games in the world. We're choosing what games to devote our money to, and the entire thing is a giant game when you understand that it's like it's all under the rules of the money game that is the US dollar as backed by the government. It's all under like a national government's game. But so we're playing these games, and money is all about finding the best next option, or finding a more, like, making your dollar go further. Like, all of these companies are trying to find the most efficient way to make money. Money is always about making more money efficiently. That's what all these companies are doing, all these functions that exist in the real world. And money itself, then, you understand, would go, is trying to be more efficient. And what results currently right now is a cryptocurrency way of money communicating itself. This is a new packaging, totally new like genre in which money explains itself, but it is because money is in the direction of becoming more efficient. A more efficient and comprehensive explanation of money is one that runs completely on electricity, because money is already current. And the whole thing is about electricity, because you need electricity to mine the coins that come into the system, and it's like the people that are employed on these systems are harnessing electricity, like that specific thing. And it's electricity that flows through all the nodes, addresses, commercial and residential, that electricity that, because this is like electronic money, but so it's electricity that flows through these things, but people already act like electricity flowing through different stores as current to deliver money in and out. So that, but like money and in cryptocurrency, you understand there's just like so much transacting happening, and the more transacting that's happening, the more motion and energy, and the more that your money is going in all these different directions, is how current and relevant your money tied to your function is. So like the more Target stores that there are, the more you understand Target's relevance in the world, the relevance of their currency. It's just that we don't typically see, oh, Target has its own currency. It is, we explain this to ourselves through stocks, but it's like Target employees are receiving money that Target received from its function. And so they pay for other things in terms of Target money. But like, so different currencies, and they're all like connected, but these are object-oriented systems, and it kind of has to do with making an with all of this existing in a digital space. This is almost like making everything that happens in the physical world exist in an imagined reality, or just like within a person's imagination. But it's like you creating a function. This is you getting to act like the function that you make exists in your imagination, as opposed to you're within Target, you're in somebody else's imagination, somebody else's vision function that they wrote. But it just becomes easier for you to make your own Target. Like, you can do it from your house, is what you can do now with the emergence of the internet, but like more so with the emergence of people understanding coding more. They would understand that creativity is going towards you will more and more be dependent on what can you create as a function or an application on a computer. Like, this is a useful set of things to know, because this is one of the areas that you can always be creative in, because you'll be able to create. But like, if you can be creative in it, you understand the usefulness of that is that you could create whatever the hell out of, because it just makes it easier for you to create a whole retailer, but just because of code that you write. That's what it's easy to do now. But it's like, over the last century, we've only been living out money games that are completely physical, but with the emergence of computers, you see that these things become digital. And Like I'm repeating myself a lot, but like people are like current. What and on Ethereum you understand how current is just dependent on electrons. It's dependent on electricity, and electricity, as we know it, is comprised entirely of electrons. Technically speaking, electricity can have protons in it, but use cases of this in the actual world are like, I must be speaking from like an out of breath position. Use cases of electricity where they're just protons, these are only like particle accelerators in giant fancy laboratories most of the time. Electricity that goes through your house, like goes to your TV and all your appliances, these are just electrons essentially. And so electricity is generated from power plants and like thermal power plants where they heat up water and then the steam causes a generator to spin, and it does something with like a magnetic field, because according to electromagnetism, you can generate magnetism from current from electricity, but also you can generate electricity from magnetism. And so I don't exactly understand the process, but electricity is introduced in the system, and Bitcoin is using this electricity that's generated. So we have all these ways like thermal or wind or solar to generate electricity. But I don't know enough about that right now. I'm just saying that an Ethereum system is very much dependent on electricity, but even more essentially just electrons. Electrons are in every atom, and this is why they're like abundant enough that we have electricity. Electrons are in every atom, and atoms are what compose literally everything around you. So there's like this giant abundance of electrons. It's just a matter of how do we harness them. And you have people like Nikola Tesla, and Tesla could harness electrons from the air to just like create electricity with whatever machines that he was making. But people didn't like the kind of power he had or what he was able to do. So like it didn't end up going mainstream at the time, and he died not knowing the impact he made, died thinking that it was all the other scientists that had credit that would ever be remembered. But it's only in recent years that we recognize Tesla for creating certain, like, for contributing so much to electricity or whatever. But like, so I'm trying to figure out what's the analogy for Target. What are people like electrons is it like electrons that deliver the money? It's just that money is, if you consider it in terms of electrons, there's a point at which it's kind of more just electrons than it is money. Like there's a point at which money is more currency than it is money. And this is what we're trying to describe with the emergence of something like cryptocurrency. We're trying to graduate to explain that money is a flowing current type of thing. And so current in itself is hard to describe, but it's kind of like the difference between nouns and verbs. And nouns and verbs exist in an object-oriented system in your mind, where all of the nouns are like nodes in the network. They're like, you've defined definitions in a certain way, but people as a society have a language developed a certain way, so that we're like, this address is this noun. This address means anger. Just like anything that you describe in your sentences, your language, your society has a common language that you create that language so that you can communicate addresses, like go to this place with the word that you say, so people hear what you're saying, they know what addresses to go to string together the nodes. And like, it's kind of like nouns are nodes, but then we have verbs that describe currency that flows between the nodes and brings different things to the nodes. Like, and different verbs are like different currencies, I would say. Verbs are like the currencies are the different money, all the different cryptocurrencies, there's thousands of them. They all do different functions. They do different functions. These are like verbs because they're current the way the verbs are. Verbs are current, they describe motion. But like, so if you describe the rabbit ran to its home, here you see that there's two nouns, rabbit and home, and then ran is a verb. This would be like sending money from one address to another, but like a rabbit is a rabbit would be the cryptocurrency, so to speak. So it's like, so we have people and animals that are able to go from one location to another, that they like are currency, but like based on the different, so they are agent, there are agents in the world that have freedom over their movement, as opposed to plants. And like a tree is always in the same place, whatever. This is more like a stationary, I guess that would be more like a node in the network. So maybe it's not so much that every noun is a node, it's just that there's addresses. And like in the same way that we have a language that we like imagine we know what words to go to, like the entire world around you is a giant object-oriented system, as I've been explaining. So it's like you see a shrub, and this is a noun, but it's an address. It's an address called shrub, as opposed to 3211 Main Street. It's a shrub. Shrub is the specific like number location, like it's that specific because it's like just a shrub. But we know when we see a shrub that it's that, as opposed to like a tree, because we're projecting, because of what we project onto it, because we see these different objects, and we're just like, the language that we've created is such that it ascribes it describes that to like a shrub. You see that there's a shrub and it's a specific noun, but it's like a specific location, but like as you walk around in the world. But it's different from the space that's around the shrub, because there's all this space, and where there aren't objects, that there's like, this is a defined point, a defined location, like defined node. There's all this space, and space is kind of like where you would understand verbs could be happening, or current could flow, or there's like potential connection pathway from one potential node to another, including nodes that haven't been created yet. So it's like as much as there are words that we've made, there are infinite like words and ideas that we haven't made, like inventions that we could possibly make, different, where we could accumulate the functions of, we could combine the functions of other nodes to make another node, to make a new one, or whatever. There's all this space in the world. This represents unrealized imagination or potential. And like, because we don't fill all the space with definitions, so this is just the way that it plays out. And in the same way that a language only has certain words, and it reaches a certain point where we're like, okay, we efficiently are able to describe all of this, rather than that we need to keep creating new definitions, like does a language. But like the world is composed of addresses, like, and you know what the address is because of the language that you've described, the same way that residentially, like, we need to pinpoint and make every address specific. That's why we give it different names. But like but in the real world, the address system of like 3211 Main Street, this is kind of a subset of the entire object-oriented system of that. You see that grass, and you have a word for that is an address. But like, we don't go to the point of saying this specific blade of grass versus this one. So there's something more important about residential, like putting numbers to the places that people live, because we put value on human beings, and that kind of thing. But like, you can go from one address, you can go from one noun to another, not just physically, but with the words that you're saying. Like, you can go, if you're looking at a house and then a shrub that's in the yard of this house, rather than physically going from the house to the shrub, with language is this great technology and invention that allows you to make that connection, like with currency, but just like in your mind, because it's like a more, like in your mind, holding all the languages there is like a more digitized version of what happens in reality, because you can make all of those connections just with the words, or like understand how this node goes to this one. And like, so the physical world has its limitations in comparison to a virtual world, like, but language itself already gives you a picture of a more digitized version, because you can make all those connections or whatever. But like, So it's like language itself just reduces all of that to, you can say all of it miraculously enough. It reduces all of that, all of the words and locations that you can describe in the world. It reduces all of that to just be contained in your brain. And so that's already like a condensed version, and Ethereum aims to do something like that, but like on a more practical level that describes all of these things as money, and they essentially are. It's just that with cryptocurrency, we're trying to get to the heart of like we're trying to take the edge off of money by describing it in terms of just current, and the same way that language really takes the edge off of, like, it takes the edge off of that you would have to go and do all these things if you can just think about them or whatever. But like this is kind of a conversation that's void of experience you recognize, but like less experience is something the world is trending towards. Like people are more and more in their house and just buying shit from their phone because you can do all that on your phone. And so that's the worry. But like it's just that we're able to condense all the physical things into one, like in terms of money. But so it's like the rabbit runs to its home. Rabbit is like, with language you can picture this rather than have to see a rabbit do that in order to realize that that's a thing, but you've seen it happen before. But it's like rabbit is a node, home is a node, that it runs. Running is like a rabbit running is like a specific kind of currency being transacted, the same way that different currencies have different functions, have different names. So it's like Cardano versus Engine. Cardano versus Engine, these are different cryptocurrencies. They have different strengths and weaknesses. They have different liquidities. And liquidity is the ability of a money to be transacted further across a network in a shorter period of time, like the ability for it to be liquid, and so like the ability for it to be current. This is what's described with liquidity. And so different cryptocurrencies have different levels of liquidity. They have different capabilities of transacting faster, and so they're kind of like, they're different verbs. The same way some verbs describe different faster rates of motion, different cryptocurrencies have a faster rate of motion based on their liquidity, how much they're able to be converted into liquid, or how much they're able to be current as opposed to solid. The more solid and less liquid that a cryptocurrency is, the more that it's going to stay in the same place. So, or just be stuck to an address. Like if you have a cryptocurrency that doesn't have the liquidity of being able to be transacted to like this exchange, then or to any exchange, if it can only stay on a wallet, or like the only thing it can do is be converted back into US dollars, like there's only one place to be exchanged for it, then it doesn't have the liquidity of going to all these different exchanges. And so like with different cryptocurrencies, they're available, like the more utility a cryptocurrency has, more liquidity, the more it is available on every single exchange, because it can go to all the exchanges, go to all the addresses, the more exchanges it's available on. And so the more like accessible it is to you, to the outside world. It describes how liquid it is. But like if it's not available on exchanges, it's just going to stay in a wallet more so, relatively more so. And so this is what's described, like it had like a cryptocurrency's ability to be liquid. This describes that it would have a faster rate of motion. So different cryptocurrencies have different names, different characteristics, have different rates of motion that they're able to do, have access to different verbs, have different ways of being translated across the system, communicating themselves across the system. And they, like, So a rabbit runs home. This is like rabbit is a node, home is a node, run. But like rabbit running is like money being transacted. So I guess it's kind of like the rabbit in that case, since it is doing the motion and is the noun, is like a cryptocurrency, and the amount that you're exchanging also plays a factor in this analogy. It has to do with what is being run. Like if it's a lot of money, um, if it's a lot of money, I wonder if this is more difficult to move it, if it takes more work or more force to move a greater amount of money, or if this is, no, like it takes more energy to move more money, I would think. But this is where like I would need to know more about this, because this is what I'm describing is like a conversion between money and electrons. Like, does it take more electrons to move more money? Because this is because the material, the commodity that's being moved with electricity is money. Like, and then so do you need more electrons to move more money? But like, the way I describe that different verbs play out, this is descriptive of a different noun playing out like using a different verb, and this is wrapped up in a different cryptocurrency and then different amounts of money being exchanged from one address to another. So like the addresses in this case, you'd have to take into account where the rabbit was and this pinpointed location and then to its home. But it's like, you see that home on the language network that exists in your mind. This is like an exchange on the network, a node that is an exchange as opposed to just a singular person's address, because everybody uses home in their language to describe their home. Like, besides that, everybody is going to different homes, like different physical locations as their home. Like, home is a word that goes over all of those when you are just using it as a word or just as language. And so like everybody uses home, so everybody is going in and out of this word, this location in their minds to describe what they're doing. And it's like with the language system, this is home is common to everyone, and it's like a very current. It's a hot spot. Like there's lots of money. It's like an exchange that has a lot of volume that a lot of people are using. This is what the word home is for. Like, this is a spot that everybody goes to in their mind to describe home. But it's like common. Everybody has a lot of utility because everybody uses it in their language to describe what they're doing. Like, everybody has to use it and stake their reputation on having a home in order to describe this thing. But it's like a societal thing to have a home. You're going to want that. You're going to want something to call home so that you can be on board with everybody else, be part of the community that uses the word home. There's this community that's developed around using the word home. It's like everybody in the entire country. And so there's words that have greater communities, a greater utility, like, and they are like words. Each word itself is kind of like its own function, as its own cryptocurrency. And there's like something like home that people have a lot more use cases for, but a community is developed around exchanging in this term with people. And like, so you see how like a word is like its own function in this way that people utilize for their own benefit. So it's like, maybe I haven't hammered out, are people like electrons? Like, let me just talk that out. Like the rabbit going home. There's different verbs, and there's different pathways that you would go, because it's not just running as opposed to walking difference in verbs, because that would describe the liquidity of the cryptocurrency as it is going from one address to another, or you know what, just its speed, just its velocity, because different cryptocurrencies have different abilities to be transacted quickly. Like XRP gets transacted very quickly. This is its value, and why people buy it is because it's faster than even like Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is one of the slowest and takes up the most energy. And so it's like the rate at which a cryptocurrency moves, this varies cryptocurrency to cryptocurrency. This is, so like one would be running, another would be walking, like the way that they move. but it's also like, it's not just running, it could be, because there's like different altitudes involved in different verbs that you can describe, like jumping or just consuming, or because there's plenty of verbs that wouldn't describe motion. And but like there's motion verbs. Motion verbs, I'd say, well describe the transacting process, you sending money from one place to another, and then they describe like you going from your house to Target. This is like money. This is money going from a residential address node to a smart contract node. This is money, especially from like Target's perspective. You're just money as opposed to that you're a person. It's like the money that's on you. This is the same thing as the money that's on you. This is the same thing as just we've digitized it so that we're like money from this dot to this dot. And so that's what Ethereum, or like a blockchain, a giant object-oriented system that's created digitally for money to go from spot to spot across all the money spots. Like in creating Ethereum, they're like, oh, you know that where people are in the world sending, like going to GameStop and buying something and then going and getting a haircut, like rather than all of that, as it turns out, people like to do this stuff digitally. So we're just going to do all the money spots. We're just going to make it money dot to dot. But everybody can just do this from their home. And let's see if that works. And if it does work, that shows that people don't value experience of doing it enough, more so than that they just want to do the money that they want to play a money game at all. So this is, if Ethereum becomes this magnificent, very valuable venture, it will be because, as it turns out, people want to do the money game without even needing the experience of it, because it just makes it so that money dot goes from this dot to this one, the same way it already works in the physical world, but it takes humanity out of it, or maybe disassociates people from money completely. Like, so it's this totally new set of technologies that brings about this entirely new relationship to money that we would have as people, one in which we are over it as opposed to physically it's above us, like as opposed to we have to go into all the money spots. And so if you don't like money, like cryptocurrency will help take the edge off of it. Like if you're not a fan of money itself, cryptocurrency is this new technology that revolutionizes the money system. But it's just the new art form for money itself, that money is articulating itself through. It's just the new art form, as opposed to, oh, for this past century we did banking and Boeing was like, but like obviously there's things you'd still need to do physically that we couldn't digitize you flying from one place to another, unless everything was just in virtual reality. But like so it's like different verbs. Like you go from one place to another. This is money being sent from one address to another, and then you transact at Target. Say you buy a coffee maker at Target. This is just that the code written for Target dictates that you can possibly buy a coffee maker, the same way that an application written on Ethereum would dictate, like there is this crypto called shopping.io, and it's just crypto for shopping online. But their goal, it's a real one, their goal is just to make it so that, oh, there's not Amazon or eBay or Kohl's that you can buy all these things from. All of that is consolidated into this one shopping place that you buy your items through with cryptocurrency instead of with money, but also they have their own currency. So it's like shopping.io is like a token, I think, that's written, rather than that it's its own blockchain. It's an application because it's just like a website. It's just a singular website. Shopping.io is a token on a blockchain rather than that it's its own blockchain. And so it serves it's this specific function where it consolidates shopping into, but it has its own currency too, called like the shopping token or whatever, that you can you probably get a discount buying whatever the hell in the world if you use their currency. But besides that, you can buy all this shit with Bitcoin and Ethereum on their website is the point of it. But like, why did I bring that up? Like, this consolidates shopping, but like you going from one place to another, this is money. I was describing the transacting process. So like shopping.io, you can convert your money into anything that you could buy hypothetically at the point that they are able to make all of that available, because at this point they probably haven't made it so that their inventory is like you could buy anything on the shopping.io, but their goal is so that you could buy anything. So the rules of the program that they write, within the rules, it allows for them to maximize inventory to allow for thousands of different objects. That's what's written within, that's what's possible based on the rules of the game that somebody wrote for the program that is this function, shopping.io. And so like Target is the same way. They make it so you can transact your money through all these different avenues, but they're like, you see that that's just a giant network because they're connected to all these people that create like a grill rather than the Target makes it. So Target is maybe more like an exchange or something, but just different functions do different things. And without that currency, without the reality of Target, this exchange isn't possible, and this place of currency exchange doesn't happen. You wouldn't call it, because you need something to call the place that you're giving the money to. Like Target is this money spot that, like, without this integrated point of reference that they've integrated the ability to sell all these things, well, then you would just have Walmart. They're just another, like in that sphere, they're just another competitor where they're like a supercenter type retailer. So they're a competitor, but it's like they're a little bit more like, they're a little bit less like Walmart, a little bit more like, I don't know. But they're their own position. Everybody makes their own function as a competitor. So there's all these people making these different functions that are competitors within the market to make money, and it's just that it's very direct and very literal, the relationship that these companies have to money now when they just exist on something like Ethereum, and they're speaking themselves entirely in terms of their currency. Like this, an acceptance of this across society, one of the main significances is the devaluation of of the sanctity of money, to water it down just to understand, define it better as what it actually is. It's just current. It's flowingness, but it's difficult to describe flowing things, but yet we're able to do it. You see that we do that with verbs, but the different ways that you can verb yourself, motion yourself through the world. So it's like, what's something I could do? I could turn a switch. I could turn a switch, and that's a verb. It involves turning. You would say that verb is turning. Flipping. I'll flip a switch. So I will flip a switch. This is something I can do. This is a motion that I can carry out, but it's like it's somewhat dependent on your vocabulary because if somebody's like flip that switch and you never heard the word flip before, you're not going to know what to do with the switch unless maybe they motion in some other way. Like if you're entirely stupid or something, like totally new to whatever. If somebody's like, build a shoe, like make a shoe, you don't know how to do that. Construct a shoe. This is kind of like, we don't have a verb for construct a shoe, like shoemaking, make a shoe, but we're like, the word isn't so that there's like flip a switch, but okay. I'm just getting bogged down, and I'm going to get bogged down in details too much in describing this maybe than to get across a point that relates to the rest of what I said. But like this verb, like that I flip a switch is something I can do. Cryptocurrencies have different functions that they can do. It's dependent on what's imagined into the cryptocurrency, it's because they have different functions, different programs. People are just programs a little bit to some extent, but to the extent that you receive and use different nouns and verbs, and you can use these to your advantage, this is like a programming side of humanity, whereas like you're enacting programs, you're living out programs, and you're writing you're saying programs. Like people are programmed with certain nouns and verbs that they then spit back out later when the situation calls for it. Like obviously the English language is very adaptable. There's a lot of uses, so it's not like you would say that you're being manipulated or forced to use these words, but in some senses you are forced to use them because you'd have to spit out terms that people have heard before. Like everyone in society is programmed since they need to speak in common language. Like I guess I'm using the term program as it's not so terrible, but like they're like a word itself is like a program that it runs a certain way, that the way that you use it when you speak, like a dog eating a stick, like I guess you describing it, like you using the word dog, this is like it's like a program. People are a little bit like programs. But more on that later. People are like programs. What is the full extent of that? I don't know, but I will get more into electricity and more on what I'm talking about later. And next episode, I'm going to have a guest on, and good for me, good for all of you. Thanks for listening, and talk to you soon.